Welcome to the Every Brain is Different podcast. It is Samantha and Lauren with you, and Happy New Year. I thought it would be awesome to talk about something that I am going to work on this year, which is giving my, especially one kid, more positive feedback than negative feedback. So we have some stats that we'll get to about why neurodivergent kids receive more negative than positive feedback, and this affects them in so many different ways. But I've noticed in my own, I am very aware of this, and I still catch myself, especially with one of my kids, giving way more negative feedback than positive feedback. And I feel so bad because he's such an awesome kid. There are just some things that, he gets distracted a lot. So I'm like, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'm going to try and work on that this year. That's like my main goal is, last week we talked about not setting up too many goals, not new year, new me, but I am going to be focused more on what feedback I am giving him. And I've already started doing that. I'll be like, I'll say his name and it sounds like I'm going to give negative feedback. And then I catch myself and I'm like, oh, you're doing awesome. Or I love how you did this. And so I'm
Mhm.
trying to catch myself in that moment now. But yeah, that's my main focus for this year.
I just witnessed all of this in all of its glory, or lack thereof glory, this past week with the kiddo and the people supporting him. And at one point, I did was like, "Are you ready for my unsolicited parenting advice?" And that was the thing that I pointed out. I was like, "There are stats. This poor child. This whole time, all I heard was no, don't stop, no, don't stop, no." Like,
Yeah.
where was the positivity? So I was very conscious in my interaction with this child to be that voice of positive amongst all that negative. So it's definitely it happens, and a lot of people don't realize they're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. When I realized how much I do it, I was like, oh no, like I felt so bad. And I know that neurodivergent kids all over receive significantly more corrective
Mhm.
feedback than praise. And multiple studies have found that children with ADHD and autism receive way more reprimands, corrections, and redirections and positive comments from adults, especially in school settings. So if we can offset that in the home environment and then talk to the school too and say, these studies have shown that in school settings, like I'm not coming at you directly, like I'm not singling you out, like talking to the teacher, but just be aware that on the average, neurodivergent kids receive way more negative feedback than positive feedback. So just be aware of that. And estimates often cited in education research suggest ratios as high as 3 to 1 or 5 to 1 negative to positive interactions for kids with ADHD compared to closer to 1 to 1 for neurotypical peers. And that's huge.
Yeah, I also, because I was having this discussion with a colleague, this specific topic, and she said that she has witnessed in the school, like when they know that a kid has ADHD, like even if they're like literally exhibiting the same behaviors as like the neurotypical group, they're going to be the one that gets that outcasted of the negative comments, even though there's the same group of kids over here doing the same thing, but because they kind of have that label already, and that's really sad.
Yeah, yeah. The kids with ADHD tend to do bigger behaviors than neurotypical kids. And so they're the ones that are noticed when a neurotypical kid can be doing the same exact thing, but the ADHD kid is doing it louder. And so they're the one that gets reprimanded, or they do it more often. And so the teacher singles them out. And I'm not saying that teachers are bad for doing this because it's so easy to do. It's just something we need to be more aware of.
Yeah.
And then because when most adult interactions are corrective, kids internalize the message that they are the problem, not the environment or expectations being the problem. Like maybe the environment, maybe the expectations need to be adjusted, but kids internalize that as I'm the problem, not that I don't have enough support to do what you're asking me to do. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
And then going along with that, adults tend to respond to visible behaviors, not internal effort. And so neurodivergent kids often expend more effort on tasks like sitting still, transitioning, regulating emotions, or tolerating sensory input. And that effort is usually invisible. Adults don't know how much effort they're putting into doing those things that they know that they are expected to do. And so the adults will comment on the behavior like interrupting, avoiding, melting down, rather than the regulation work happening underneath. Because the kids can be trying so hard and then they interrupt one time and the adult's like, why are you interrupting me? Stop interrupting me. When we don't recognize all the hard work that they've done not to interrupt 50 times before
Yeah,
that one time.
exactly.
And then kids learn that effort doesn't count unless it looks successful by neurotypical standards. And so that's the problem that happens when we only recognize outward signs of success, quote unquote
The
success.
outcomes.
Yeah, the outcomes rather than their effort. And so even for neurotypical kids, it's so important to praise the effort rather
Hmm.
than the outcome because then they learn that they're only good or they're only worth anything if they have a good outcome, not all the effort that you put in. I mean, think about it. Like, okay, I'm doing a pageant in February. So what if the only thing that people saw was I didn't win? I'm going to win. I'm putting that into the universe. But what if I don't? You know,
Yeah.
what if I don't? And then if someone came up to me and said, I can't believe you didn't win. What's your problem? You know? And they didn't recognize all the effort that I'm putting in trying to learn how to do all the pageant things. Like that would be devastating. I mean, this is just a silly example, but that's just the first thing that came to
It
my
would
mind.
it make you not want to try again?
Yeah, and it would make me not want to try again because well, I'm a failure because I didn't win.
Yeah, so
Or
why
this,
bother
yeah, yeah.
the
Or
next
like
time?
I had my preschool a few years ago and I shut it down because it was just too much work. I couldn't find staff and I couldn't find the appropriate supports to keep the kids safe because they all had high behavioral needs. I could look at that as a failure. And people have been like, oh, well, that was a failure of a business. But they didn't see the effort and the things that I learned in that. And
Hmm.
so I think that business wasn't a failure. The outcome was a failure, obviously, because I don't have it anymore. But what I learned better and the effort that I put in and what I learned about business has helped me way more than keeping that business going.
Exactly.
So
The learning experience, if anything, when there's a failure.
yeah, yeah. Or, okay, one more example. This is more closer to students. I did the history fair when I was in middle school. I put in so much effort. I did it 3 years in a row. I put in so much effort and like I wrote two papers, like 10-page papers when I was in sixth and seventh grade, annotated all that kind of stuff. And then I did a drama, like a dramatic play for my eighth grade year, and I put in so much work. Can you imagine if after the history fair, I didn't win. My mom or dad came up to me and said, I can't believe you didn't win. What a wasted effort. You
Yeah.
know, so that's wild. But that's kind of what we're doing when we tell kids, like, oh, you interrupt too much, or you do this too much, or you do that too much. And we're not recognizing the effort that they put in not interrupting 50 times more than
Yeah.
what they do interrupt. Like,
And
yeah,
all those small things add up. Like,
yeah. And so then they experience shame and
shame is big.
shame is huge. I still like I think that's why people with ADHD are such high achievers on the regular because they feel shame when they don't achieve something. And that's not a good feeling. I know that's why I'm such a high achiever because if I don't do the things that I think people are expecting me to do, like I feel so much shame. And I'm working on that. But like I put so much stress on myself and so many unrealistic expectations because I think other people want me to do it and I'm a people pleaser. And so just putting that on kids and only giving them praise when they have an outcome that you like, that's not it. So let's just
Yeah.
stop that. Yeah. And then going along with that, repeated negative feedback increases stress and reduces capacity. So, research on stress physiology shows that frequent criticism activates the nervous system's threat response. And then for neurodivergent kids whose nervous systems may already be more reactive, repeated negative feedback can lead to shutdown, avoidance, aggression, or burnout rather than improvement. So, you think that harping on something is going to give them motivation to do better. That is not at all what's going to happen. If you give them positive feedback, that's going to motivate them to keep doing what they're doing. I mean, that's basic behaviorism.
Mhm.
If you give them positive feedback over negative feedback, they're going to keep doing what they're doing because they like that feeling. They like the outcome of what they're doing, you know? And so this matters because what looks like not trying is often a stress response, not a motivation issue. And we've talked about that a lot, like especially in kids with pathological demand avoidance, where they shut down, they're not doing anything because they're stressed. And so they don't do anything at all. And so if you continue harping on them, like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, they're just going to shut down even more or be more aggressive or run away or whatever. And then negative feedback. I think this is the most important one. Negative feedback shapes identity, not just behavior. So, longitudinal research on children with ADHD shows higher rates of shame-based self-talk, low self-esteem, and anxiety, often beginning in early elementary school. And many adults with ADHD report that they internalized labels like lazy, difficult, or bad long before they understood their brains. And so this is important because kids don't just hear the feedback that we're giving them, they internalize it. So like we are talking about before, like I'm a bad person because I didn't accomplish this thing. Like I'm a bad person because I can't do something, or I'm lazy, or I'm difficult, or too much. And that's what I always heard when I was a kid was I'm too much. I'm too emotional. I'm too hyperactive. I'm too blah 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 blah. And so I internalized all those things as negative things as I grew. And then I was very ashamed of my emotions. So anytime I like kind of maybe lost control of my emotions and cried or whatever, I was very ashamed and I tried not to do that. So I tried to like stuff my emotions down deep and not think about them. And that just made everything worse. And then I got really stressed out and then I had a nervous breakdown.
And
So,
then you're like also like apologizing. Like,
yeah,
you've done it to me. I'm sorry, I'm too much.
yeah,
Or like I've
yeah,
had I'm like, you're you.
yeah, yeah. I've done it.
There's
I do
nothing
it
wrong
all.
with that.
Yeah, I've done that before where I'm
But
like, I'm sorry, I'm way too hyper right now. Or because people tell me, you're too much. You need to calm down. You need to be less expressive. One time, so I don't know why I'm talking about pageants so much today, but when I was 9 years old, I was in a pageant and they're like, your walk is too bouncy. You seem too happy while you're walking. You need to walk straight. And I was like, that's a weird thing to say. Like, you're too
I
happy
told
when
you
you're
that.
walking.
Yeah.
But I internalized that. I still think about that to this day when I walk. I'm like, oh, I'm bouncing too much. I need to slow my roll.
That's
And
ridiculous.
yeah, so kids will internalize what you say and it becomes them not just, it's not just feedback that you're giving them, like you're shaping their personalities almost and what
Mhm.
they think about themselves. And then praise often disappears when kids struggle the most. So adults tend to praise when things are going well and withdraw positive feedback when behaviors escalate. So unfortunately, that's when kids need the most reassurance and connection and affirmation is when they're having a hard time, when they're struggling. They need you to say, oh, I see that you're struggling. How can I help you? How can I support you? Or I see that you're struggling. Let's do this. And not just, you need to calm down. You need to stop crying. You need to do this because that activates the shame and the stress response and all of that. So, yeah, just stop. Stop doing that. I know we
Right. Just be
shouldn't
more
shit on
self-aware
people.
of it.
I know, I know.
Like,
And
it's hard.
yeah,
In the
yeah.
moment, like things just come out. Like you can't
And
just
this is really hard. Like I said, like I have been aware of this and I still struggle because when you're stressed as a parent, you're going to tell your kid to hurry up, stop getting distracted, stop doing this, stop doing that, because that's when it comes out the most, is when I'm tired or we're in a hurry or yeah,
Mhm.
we just need to get somewhere. I need my kids to go to bed, or I need my kids to get out the door. And my one kid is just, it looks like he's just dinking around doing whatever. And I just need him to listen and follow instructions. And so then I get stressed. And instead of being like, oh, I love how you got your coat, reminder, we need to put our shoes on. I say, why aren't your shoes on yet? What's going on? And he's always, Mom, you know I have ADHD. You know I get distracted. And so then that reminds me again, yes, he has ADHD. He gets too distracted. Like, we don't need to shame him
Yeah.
for how his brain works.
I think one thing that I witnessed in this past week is the rapid fire of instructions that are being given to this child. And like, one, they're young and they're processing. He was trying to get through the first instruction before, and he got yelled at for not being done with it. He was mid process.
Yeah.
And so a lack of patience is on the parents' part, like huge, and how this can happen sometimes.
Yeah, and parents play a huge role in how their kids see themselves, especially if your kid is in school or maybe they're in sports and they're getting all that negative feedback from like their coaches or their teachers or the principal or whoever. If you go to church, if they're getting negative feedback from like the people at church, it's super important to have more positive feedback when you're at home. And I'm not shaming any parents, and I'm not saying you're a bad parent for doing this. We're just saying be
Just be
aware.
aware.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just be aware that your kid is getting so much negative feedback elsewhere that just be aware of what you're saying. And so I think that's the main message today. Next week, we're going to talk about how to intentionally focus on the positive and give meaningful positive feedback. Because I know when you get stressed, you're like, what would I even say right now for positive feedback? I can't even think of anything. And I know that's super hard. So next week, we're going to talk about that. And yeah, just be aware. And if this is something you want to focus on, if this is something that you need help with, definitely connect with us. Join the neurodivergent parenting community, and I can help support you. And yeah, any parting words, Lauren?
Not really. I'm gonna shout out to a book, the No David series.
Yeah.
I've heard a few parents really like that for their kids for this reason, because like at the end, it's even though all of these bad things and you were told these negative comments, like at the end of the day, it's unconditional love and we love you, and having that reminder. And so that's just like a good little book series for kiddos to get that reinforcement of they're not bad all the time and they're still loved. So
Yeah, that's super important. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. We'll have a link to that and to the neurodivergent parenting community. And yeah, we'll see you all next week when we talk about how to intentionally focus on the positive and give meaningful positive feedback. So we hope you all have a good week.